Now, from the makers of Cold Water Omo...
It was early morning, and the wind whistled down the main thoroughfare of Shoreham, a small suburban town south of London. The inhabitants washed the night's sleep from their eyes, put kettles on, made tea, gulped breakfast, glanced at newspapers, and huddled in overcoats made for buses, trains, and cars. Two women, char ladies by profession, were coming off duty. They'd been cleaning the offices at the council and were looking forward to reversing the popular procedure. They wanted to get home.
Sean, awfully glad to get back and put the kettle on, Dave. Oh, you're telling me. Hope my old man's up and about. Mine's on early shift this week. Makes it difficult, you know. Never seem able to get together these days. You know what I mean? That could be an advantage. Sometimes I'd like to get rid of Bert for a day or two. Man, more trouble than they're worth. Well, look at that. There's one of them taking it seriously, pushing a pram at this time of the morning. I was going to take a baby for a walk at this hour. Mr. Bonkers. Oh, come on, Elsie, don't let's hang about. If people want to act daft, let them, I say. Come on.
The Avengers. John Steed and Emma Peel. The Avengers.
Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel are assigned to an investigation which could lead both of them to a quick, slow death. The two char ladies, plodding their way up the main street of Shoreham, turned round to watch the podgy figure of the man pushing the pram. It was an unusual sight, partly because of the early hour, and partly due to the man's appearance. He was short, but powerful. His age was the wrong side of 40, and he was puffing a bit as he pushed the pram up the hill. The pram itself was also unusual. It was old, Victorian, a bassinet more than a pram, and it was very large. At the crest of the hill, the man stopped, applied the brake to the pram, and entered a telephone booth.
Money. If I got enough change here.
The man was about to drop a coin in the machine and press button A when he glanced out of the windows of the booth. The pram's brake wasn't holding. It slipped off as the pram picked up speed. The man dropped the phone hastily and, bursting out of the booth, raced after the runaway pram. The two char ladies joined in.
That's all, baby! Stop the pram! Someone's got to stop it!
Hold up, wait!
The pram gained speed, rocking sideways as it sped downhill towards a traffic intersection. The man raced by the two women just as the pram reached the bottom of the incline. It bumped off the curb and careered into the center of the road. The man made a flying dive, grabbed at the handle of the pram, just touched it as... The van, coming round the corner, skidded as it tried to avoid him. It caught him a glancing blow, which flung him into the gutter. The pram slowly tipped over. The contents spilled into the wet road. The two char ladies panted to a stop and looked down at the scene.
Oh, blimey! Look at that! Out of the pram! But he's not a baby at all. He's a fully grown man in evening clothes. And he's dead. Shot in the chest.
The weather that day improved considerably as the hours passed. By lunchtime, the sun managed to banish the watery clouds. Down in the country, John Steed was putting in a little target practice. Steed operated a small target launcher. It tossed empty beer cans into the air. Steed snatched up a gun. He was really doing quite well. Mrs. Peel, appearing from behind a hedge, caught the can neatly.
Oh, that's... Hello there, Steve.
Good day, Mrs. Peel. You appear to be in splendid form as a fielder.
Oh, well, I have been told that as a silly mid-off, I have few equals.
Well, like to make yourself useful with us.
You mean launching the beer can for you? Good. Two in a line, both barrels. Ready? Here we go. Not bad. But, Steve, you didn't invite me down here to act as a gun bearer.
That's true. There's someone down here I'd like you to meet.
Oh. With a view to work, business, pleasure, romance?
Work.
I was afraid of that. Here we go again. Steed, you missed.
Of course, that was a full can of beer. My pre-luncheon refreshment. Hate to see good beer going into orbit.
Who am I to meet?
Willie Fair. He used to be a top agent, but he's now relegated to traffic control.
Traffic control?
For incoming spies. He's the man who makes the general arrangements on their arrival. You know, he's used to their accommodation, money, necessary cover, all that sort of thing.
And why should I meet him?
Well, he had a bit of an accident earlier today. Ran off the road, got knocked down. All a bit of a mess. There was also a dead man in full evening clothes.
Oh. And what does Mr. Willie Fair have to say in explanation?
I don't know. He's up at that house on the rise over there. I haven't seen him yet. Thought I'd wait for you first. Right, last two cans, Mrs. Peel. Like to try?
Anything you can do, I can do better. Annie Oakley Peel, that's me. Let him go.
The house that Steed had indicated turned out to be a headquarters for interrogation. In one of the rooms, Captain Noble, a tough-looking army type, paced the floor. A holstered revolver on one hip made him look a dangerous man. He was.
He just isn't saying anything. Not a darn thing.
The captain turned from Steed and Emma Peel and glared at the man sitting in an easy chair.
There he sits. Head bandaged, arm in a sling. Doctor says he's quite okay, not had much at all, but he just won't talk. You have a go, Steed.
Steed approached the chair.
Who was he, Willie? Who was the man in the pram? The man you were supposed to dump? Who was he? And why was he in full evening clothes?
Willie made no reply. Didn't seem to hear Steed at all.
Of course, it could be delayed concussion.
I don't think so. Seems to me it's a case of good old-fashioned stubbornness.
What about the dead man? Where does he lead us?
Oh, he's completely unknown to us. Here's the suit he was wearing. Pockets were empty, all labels removed, and it had recently been dry cleaned.
No clues at all?
Not unless you count the fact that the suit didn't fit him well.
Didn't fit him?
No, the evening dress was not the perfect fit.
Well, then perhaps he hired it.
Possible. Well, where does that take us? No. Our only hope of identifying that dead man is this.
The captain flipped a photograph onto the table.
Oh, what is this? Just a flowery design with the name Lucille engraved at the bottom. What is it, a sort of label?
Yeah, this is the only label that couldn't be removed. It's a photograph of a tattoo taken from the dead man's right arm.
Oh, yes, well, I'm told it's a dying art. Well, I'll take the hired suit angle. You take the tattoo clue, Mrs. Peel. Shall we go?
Sometime later, Mrs. Peel called upon one of the most famous salons in London, Toby Tintry's Terrific Tattoos. Toby was working on the stomach of a lady dancer.
I want it to be a pretty snake. Sort of all curled round, so when I dance, it kind of comes to life, huh?
I understand, dear lady. Just control the abdominal muscles, and I'll endeavor to oblige.
You have a most interesting job, Mr. Tintry. Is this one of your designs?
Mrs. Peel showed Toby Tintry the photograph.
Oh, yes, I think it is. Yes, hold still now.
Oh, it kind of tickles. I like it. It's kinky.
There's a selection of designs over there on the table, Mrs. Peel. You can choose whatever you want. My most popular designs are always, I love whoever it is. Closely followed by, what is home without a mother's loving touch? A lovely thought, don't you think? Of course, that's only for big people. You need plenty of room to get in that amount of words, you see. I tried it once on a skinny fella. It was disastrous. I ran out of space and ended up, what is home without a moth?
Tragic.
Yeah, completely spoilt a lovely sentiment. Shut your moment, Mrs. Peel. You can tell me what you'd like. An engraved garter around your left leg?
Well, no, actually,
No. Perhaps rosebuds, pretty pink rosebuds, one on each leg.
I don't want to be tattooed.
You don't? Then what?
This photograph. Do you recall who you worked on? Who was it?
Peaver. Mr. Peaver. Funny little chap. Thin hair, glasses, middle-aged, nervous. I'd have been down, a bit well. And he wasn't married. Well, he told me so. And you get to know a lot about people in this business. Get under their skins, so to speak. There. Let's finish that. Off you go now. What's Peaver done? Must be something, or you wouldn't be asking all these questions.
He was involved in an accident. What you'd call a write-off.
Oh, dear. All that work for nothing. And you want to know who his seal is? That's right, Mrs. Peel?
That's right, Mr. Tinkley. That's dead right.
While back in the interrogation room, Willie Fair still sat motionless and lethargic. The captain continued to pace the room. Steed had left. They were alone. There was a knock at the door.
Oh, that'll be food. The only time you open your mouth is to eat.
The captain moved towards the door. Willie's eyes flickered, fastened on the revolver at the captain's belt. Willie stood up, removed his tie, and moved silently after the captain, his hands outstretched and murder in his eyes. Willie Fair had been a top agent. John Steed had worked with him in Berlin and got to appreciate the man's thoroughness. But everyone grows old, and time makes even the most expert lose their touch. Willie had been downgraded, placed in a safer position, that of traffic officer, a man who looks after incoming spies or refugees seeking tranquility in Britain's peaceful countryside. But something had gone radically wrong. Willie had bungled a job, and a man called Peaver had died. Why, no one knew. Captain Noble couldn't get any information from Willie, who appeared to be suffering from severe shock. He was remote, unalive, until he sprang at the captain and tried to choke the life out of him.
You will die. No.
The captain reached for the gun at his belt, withdrew it from its holster. The struggle continued. Captain Noble got a grip on the gun and turned it into Willie's body. Willie jerked back under the impact of the bullet, but tenaciously held onto the tie, pulling it tighter and tighter around the captain's neck. The captain passed out. Willie, holding his wounded side, staggered to the telephone.
Hello. Here. Really here. Listen. Had a road accident. They found Peaver. Yes. All identification removed, but we overlooked the evening suit. It was hired from Litchin and Company, and
Willie fell to the floor, and the telephone receiver swung silently to and fro. There was a click from the phone, and then silence. Litchin and Company is one of the most respectable shops in London. Discreet, quiet, and fully carpeted. One feels upon entering the shop that hiring any form of wearing apparel is the right thing to do. Nothing underhand or poverty-stricken about Litchin and Co. Owning clothes becomes rather ordinary. Hiring them from Litchin's makes one feel like royalty. Steed entered, looked around the many curtain changing booths, and eventually found Huggins, the manager. He showed him Peaver's suit of tails. Huggins held it up.
Yes, this is definitely one of our suits. I recognize the cut, but dear me, his decorations must have been worked very clumsily. His hose, we'll never get those invisibly mended.
The hirer can't exactly be mended either.
I beg your pardon?
Do you remember who he was?
Oh, quite definitely. I fitted him myself, actually. Long in the arm and short in the leg. Unusual combination.
Who was he?
Sir?
The man who hired the suit. Who was he?
Don't you know? After all, you're returning the suit. And with all these holes in it, I'm afraid you'll have to forfeit the deposit.
The deposit is yours.
I made it all quite clear to Mr. Peaver. If there's any damage, I said, then you'll have to
Peaver?
Yes?
Do you have his address?
It'll be in my book, but that kind of information, sir, is strictly confidential.
But not between business associates, surely.
Business?
I'm from Baggy Pants.
Baggy pants?
Top secret work, diplomatic corps only. You've seen the pictures of visiting Russian diplomats, haven't you?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Well, where do you think they get those terrible clothes from?
Baggy pants?
Baggy Pants. Guaranteed to destroy anyone's image in one zip.
I'll get Peaver's address for you.
Huggins moved off towards his office beyond the changing booths. Spider, another assistant, swanned his way over to Steed and offered to show him a selection of hats. Steed, with nothing better to do, took off his bowler and tried on an admiral's hat.
Oh, very smart.
But Gilbert and Sullivan, don't you think?
Huggins was returning with a ledger under one arm when the curtains of a nearby cubicle parted. Ivor Bracewell, who was trying on an evening suit, said,
Excuse me, could you help me with this tie?
Oh, but of course, sir.
Huggins moved into the changing booth.
I never could manage to tie one of these things. In fact, I've often thought of getting myself one of those made up.
Oh, my goodness, sir, no, that would never do, not at all. The mark of a real gentleman is that he actually ties his tie. Now, if you'll kindly look into the mirror and allow me to look over your shoulder, sir. That's it.
Huggins moved behind the man, who quietly slipped a hand into the cummerbund at his waist and withdrew a deadly-looking knife. Huggins was still speaking when...
Yes, it's a fact, sir, but in some places they won't allow you in unless you...
Steed hung about for some minutes and went to look for Huggins. In doing so, he nearly collided with Bracewell, who was leaving the shop.
No. So sorry. My fault.
Steed entered the changing booth. Huggins lay on the floor, a knife in his chest. Lying across the body was the ledger. Steed picked it up. All the pages had been ripped out. Not getting anywhere very fast, are you, Steed? Naturally, confusion reigned in Litchin & Co. The staff were appalled. Not just because of Mr. Huggins' popularity, but because such a thing had happened within the shop itself.
Such a terrible thing. At Litchin's of all places. We dressed the entire nation, you know.
Quite.
Why, without us, Ascot Race Week would look like a nudist convention.
Yes, I appreciate that, but, Mr. Sider, to get back to the crime, this ledger, one of the missing pages, was this your only book of records?
Yes, I'm afraid so. And this was the suit you were discussing with Mr. Huggins before the unfortunate occurrence.
That's right. I've been through all the pockets.
Even the hidden ones?
Hidden ones?
Oh, yes. We always provide hidden pockets. It's part of the service, you see. Now, in this case,
Sider fiddled with the waistband of the trousers and withdrew a pink slip.
What have we here?
Shoe repair ticket.
Piedis. No ordinary shoe repair, my dear sir. Piedis is a shoe outfitter worthy of one of our suits. Everything is handmade. It must be the smartest shoe shop in town. Gentlemen and ladies always go to Piedis.
In which case, this looks like a job for Mrs. Peel. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And so Mrs. Peel was asked to call at Piedi's. She did, and Piedi himself attended to her. He was positively entranced by Mrs. Peel's feet. He insisted on inspecting them.
Oh, so slender, so pale, and so exquisitely elegant. Therefore, madame, they sing, they soar.
They're also terribly useful for walking.
You make the mock. But it is true what I say. Such expressive feet. They talk to me.
Mrs. Peel couldn't resist wiggling her toes in reply.
I shall make for you the most wonderful shoes. I shall compose a shoe. I shall encase these feet in the softest leather, finely tooled, superbly sewn, devastatingly designed. Never fear, I shall treat them with delicate care.
I'm so pleased.
Of course, there is no measurement. Piedi never measures. He molds. I shall make the plaster cast, and from that I shall mold your shoes. One pair only?
Well, that'll do to be going on with. Walking shoes, please.
No slippers for the boudoir. Wellington boots in the kinkiest way.
Oh, I don't think so. I'd like to collect these. These shoes were being repaired. Here's the ticket.
Mrs. Peel handed over the repair ticket Steed had given her.
A repair?
For Mr. Peaver. You do remember Mr. Peaver, don't you?
2 cones and a banyan. Regrettable. It saddens me to admit it, Mrs. Peel, but his shoes were not specially fitted.
They weren't?
Even the most skilled craftsman must lower his standards on some occasions. This was one of those things. It was, I blush to confess, a job lot that we delivered. All different sizes.
A job lot for whom?
A team of dancers, ballroom dancers. You know, men in tails, women in tulle and sequins, and all of them positively thrashing their poor arches to destruction. Doing irreparable damage to their extremities.
This team of dancers, where do they come from?
Terpsichorean training techniques. It's a dance school. Actually, I'm told they're looking for dance instructresses.
Oh? Dance instructresses? How very interesting.
Mrs. Peel, you would not be considering... Oh, no, not with your lovely arches. It would be criminal.
Oh, don't worry, Mr. Peavy. I shan't become a fallen woman, and I shall never have fallen arches.
I wouldn't bet on either of those facts, Mrs. Peel. John Steed and Emma Peel were investigating the death of an unknown man in evening clothes who'd been toppled out of a pram one cold and windy morning in Shoreham High Street. Willie Fair, a passé agent, had been in the process of disposing of the body when an accident had knocked him unconscious. Fair himself had then met a sticky end when trying to escape during a period of interrogation. So, the dead man's identity remained unknown until both John Steed and Emma Peel had come up with the name Arthur Peaver. Mrs. Peel's investigations followed the trail of Peaver's dancing shoes. It led her to the salon of Terpsichorean training techniques. Mrs. Peel entered the ballroom.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and back. Knee, turn those, swing those feet, and watch that balance. Up, up, up on your toes. Oh, control it a bit more, Nicky.
Yes, Miss Banks.
Nicky, a slim, pretty dance instructress, swerved a very fat man who appeared to be very heavy on his and her feet.
So sorry, miss. You beg your pardon.
It's quite all right. Swing! Come round, 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 that's it, round.
I can't.
The fat man stumbled. The impetus of the turn seemed to send him into orbit. Mrs. Peel was unfortunately within that orbit.
Oh, dear, dear, dear.
So sorry.
Oh, well, perhaps this is as good a time as any to have a tea break. Take a break, Nicky, dear. I am Miss Banks, the principal here. Can I help you? Oh, I hope so. My name's Peel, Mrs. Emma Peel. And you wish to train to trip the Terpsichorean light fantastic. Well, Mrs. Peel, I can assure you that you've got... Well, actually, I want a job. Indeed? Yes. I saw you were advertising for an instructress, and I thought if the post was still vacant. Well, you're very tall. That could be a disadvantage. Well, we'll put you to the test, shall we? Oh, Ivor, just in time.
The snaky man who'd committed the murder in the clothes hire shop, Litchin & Co., oiled his way across the floor, lightly smoothing his thin moustache as his eyes worked themselves over Mrs. Peel.
This is Mrs. Emma Peel. Ivor Bracewell, our senior male tutor.
Very pleased to meet you, Mrs. Peel.
Take Mrs. Peel round the floor, will you, Ivor?
With the greatest of pleasure.
Bracewell gave a seductive leer and extended his arms. Mrs. Peel, concealing a faint shudder of repulsion, slipped into them. They took the floor.
Yes, you move well enough. Have you had much experience? Well, only the most practical kind. My father, he entertained a good deal. A preponderance of heavy, elderly gentlemen. It was considered important that I make them feel as though they could dance. I see. Yes, well, I think that will do. I'll give you a chance to show what you can do, Mrs. Peel. We'll give you a week's trial. Nicky, show Mrs. Peel around the establishment. We will see how you shape up by the end of the week.
Thank you. This way, then. Mrs. Peel, I may call you Emma, ma'am.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
I'd say that one shapes up pretty well. With a shape like that, how could it be otherwise?
Keep your mind on your feet, Ivor, and your hands to yourself. This is business, not pleasure. Understand?
It didn't take Nicky long to explain the ropes to Mrs. Peel.
We're expected to take 6 pupils each per day, 1-hour sessions each. It isn't hard work, so long as you have unlimited energy, a constitution of an ox, and cast iron feet.
Is it as bad as that?
Worse. Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Reed, may I introduce Mrs. Emma Peel? She's just joined us. Chester Reed, Bandy.
Yes. How'd you do? Nice to know you. Excuse me, I know I left my cough mixture somewhere.
It's all right. He drinks a bit too much, that's all. He doesn't have enough to do during the week when we use the gramophone for practice, but he comes into his own on dance night. That's every week or so when they hold a dance for our budding pupils. We finally limp our way home about midnight, and Lucille sees that we don't rest for a moment. Oh, no. Oh, no. Look who's here.
A mousy-looking little man entered and peered around anxiously.
Our prize toe crusher. Well, you have to start somewhere, Emma. Might as well be him. Well. Good afternoon.
Afternoon?
My, we are looking debonair today.
Oh, you think so?
You're just in time to meet our latest instructress, an unrivaled expert in Latin American dancing.
You don't know the difference.
May I present Mrs. Emma Peel?
How do?
Mrs. Peel, one of our star pupils, Mr. Arthur Peaver. How do you...
That'll give you something to think about, won't it, Mrs. Peel? A few hours later, a rather exhausted Mrs. Peel turned up at John Steed's apartment. She had a candid camera shot with her, a photograph taken during the afternoon's practice of Peaver.
There, see? Thinning hair, timid, mousy.
And yet there is a superficial resemblance to the man we found in the accident involving the pram.
Yes. Seems we have 2 Arthur Peavers, one dead.
And one learning to swing a dainty shoe.
The trouble is, which is, or was, the real one?
Well, this will help me. I found out the bank Peaver used. The manager should be able to identify him from this. Like to come along, Mrs. Peel?
Oh, I wish I could, but I have to get back to the studio. I'm not exactly dancing for joy about the job, but it does give me the opportunity to do my Cinderella bit.
What?
Mrs. Peel brandished a pair of shoes.
These were made for Arthur Peaver. And if the shoe fits, well, that'll tell us something. Bye, Steve.
But getting to fit the shoes wasn't going to be easy. Back at the dance salon, Mrs. Peel could only resort to strolling into the men's locker room and leaving the shoes in the cubbyhole marked Peaver. Sooner or later, he would try them on. Mrs. Peel was making her way out when...
Out of your territory, aren't you, Mrs. Peel?
Oh, Mr. Bracewell, I got lost. Took the wrong door.
Little girl lost, eh? Let me take you by the arm.
That won't be necessary.
I'm only going to lead you back where you belong.
I can find my own way.
It pays to be nice to me.
Then I shall try to remember that. Now, will you please let me pass?
Starting now.
Bracewell made a lecherous grasp at Mrs. Peel's waist. Mrs. Peel sidestepped, grabbing an open locker door and slamming it closed on Bracewell's fingers.
Oh, my goodness, Mr. Bracewell, I do hope I haven't hurt you.
Don't think you can monkey me around. I'm important, very important, and you'll treat me with respect.
Ivor! Mrs. Peel, I believe you have a pupil waiting. Please attend to your duties. Yes, of course, Miss Banks. Excuse me, Mr. Bracewell. You fool. I told you to leave the girls alone. What was she doing in here, anyway?
I don't know. I think she was searching one of the lockers.
Is that so? Then I'd better keep an eye on her. A very watchful eye. Hadn't I?
Steed headed for the bank. It was closed, but the manager was still there, and Steed explained his business.
Yes, Arthur Peaver had an account here.
Had? Then you know?
Oh, yes. Sad.
Very sad.
Very, very sad.
Quite a shock. This photograph, is it him?
Yes, that's him.
You're sure?
Very sure.
Very, very sure?
Positive. This is Arthur Peaver. I never forget a face, despite the fact that I only met him once.
You only met him once?
Naturally. The day he came in to close his account.
I see. Did he give you a forwarding address?
Yes, he was a bit reluctant about it at first, but when I explained that I have to send details of his balance...
Do you have the address?
Somewhere here. Here it is. Yes, care of Pirbright and Company, Mackie Street.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mackie Street is dreary and gone to seed. Many office blocks stand empty. Others are in the process of being pulled down. Pirbright & Co. were on the 9th floor. Steed wasn't mad about the shaky lift, which groaned its way upwards to a shuddering stop. Steed marched down the grubby corridor and rapped on the door. It said Pirbright & Co. There was no answer. Steed tried the door. It was stiff. Steed put his shoulder to it. It flew open. Beyond the door was nothing, just empty space, a sheer drop to a disused plot of ground below. Steed clung to the doorframe and pulled himself back to safety, watching his bowler hat spinning to the ground below. Near thing, that, Steed. Mrs. Peel thought she'd got the raw end of the deal, but then she usually did when assigned to a case with John Steed. Certainly, work as a dance instructress with terpsichorean training techniques had its disadvantages. To start with, all the clients seemed elderly, overlarge, and clumsy men. Attempting to follow them round the small ballroom to the music of an old gramophone was a work of art. Nicky, Emma's companion and fellow instructress, gazed over her partner's shoulder, the despair in her eyes reflecting the pain in her feet. But, professional at her job to the last, she said,
"Why, you're making enormous improvement, Mr. Washington. So light on your feet." Oh, you're murdering mine. That's right. Splendid. I think I need a bone graft. Oh, watch out, here's Lucille.
Right, gentlemen, another delightful session finished. Come along, then, and we'll see you both again tomorrow. Well, are we ready to go for our next delightful session?
So soon?
Now, do I detect a keen note of discontent in the camp? Oh, certainly not. She's teasing you, gentlemen. You are her favorite pupils. Now, run along.
It was at that point that Arthur Peaver entered, a pair of dancing pumps clutched in one hand. Mrs. Peel's eyes never left them.
Mrs. Peel, you will partner this gentleman, Mr. Marsh.
Aye.
Even bigger than the last.
Mrs. Peel, Samba and Black Bottom.
Many a true word. Watch out for flying glass.
And you, Mr. Peaver, Nicky will take you through.
Yes.
Oh, naughty, Mr. Peaver. Let me see those shoes. Now, I've warned you before. Look, nails protruding. Will absolutely ruin our beautifully sprung floor. Sorry. Come along, we'll get you another pair.
Mrs. Peel watched the scene with chagrin, unable to follow Lucille, who turned at the doorway and said,
Get on to the left, Miss Peel, if you...
Yeah, this girl will listen. Oi, Samba. Oi, Samba.
At 5 and enthusiastic. That's too much. I'm going to claim danger money.
Mrs. Peel, holding her partner at arm's length, took the floor, while in the locker room...
Yep. Skandowski, Ustavianisch.
English. I told you, speak only English here.
But I don't understand. What was all that about?
Nothing that need bother you. You're just Arthur Peaver, remember? A quiet little Englishman. Now, change into these other pumps.
Lucille Banks selected another pair of shoes. Peaver reached out for them. As he did so, the sleeve on his right arm rode up a little. Lucille reached forward, reacted with a gasp.
Excuse me, I'll be right back.
She left the locker room hurriedly and went to find Ivor Bracewell who was admiring himself in a full-length mirror as he practiced a few dance steps.
Ivor, stop jogging about and pay attention. It's urgent, very urgent.
Why, what is it?
The tattooist. We forgot all about the tattooist. How could we have been such fools? Quickly, it's not too late. Not if we act now, at once.
Business was not brisk at Toby Tintry's tattoo workshop, but Toby, artist to his fingertips, was putting in a little practice. With a very fine drill, he was tattooing a large, pink garlic sausage. Toby Tintry hardly looked up from his work. He was engrossed.
Oh, come in. You don't mind holding on for just a moment, do you? This is a little fad of mine, practicing on a garlic sausage. Helps to keep my hand in when things are a bit slack. You see, you need a very delicate touch indeed. Unlike human skin, which is surprisingly tough, one false move on a sausage and it's all torn to pieces. Now, what can I...
Tintry stopped. A man had approached the counter. He placed his left hand on it. Tintry, glancing sideways, saw clearly tattooed on the wrist a rose. He put the drill down.
Oh, that's nice. Now, not my work, of course, but I can appreciate another's craft. Oh, it's marvelous, yes.
Tintry broke off as his eyes went from the tattoo to the man's other hand. In it, as though by magic, had appeared a pistol. It was fitted with a silencer.
What is it? You!
Tintry gasped and fell behind the counter. The drill started to whir away, jumping and jerking on the end of its cord. The assassin, who had not uttered a word, walked out of the shop. Toby Tintry, mortally wounded, dragged himself painfully towards the drill.
Oh, God. Got to help. Oh, God.
It was some 40 minutes later when John Steed arrived.
Oh? Anyone at home?
The sound of the tattooist's drill caught Steed's ear. He walked over and switched it off. It was then that he saw Tintry's legs sticking out behind the counter.
What the devil? Dead all right. But what's this?
Steed reached down and picked up the very large pink garlic sausage. One side had a superb picture of Tower Bridge. The other read,
"The killer has a rose tattoo on the right wrist."
Well, that's a clear enough clue, surely, Steed. In the dance salon, Mrs. Peel was enjoying a welcome tea break. She walked right by the large, tiresome gentleman who couldn't samba and sat down next to Arthur Peaver.
May I offer you some refreshment, Mr. Peaver?
Oh, you are most kind.
Nonsense, it's part of my job. Besides, I want to get to know you better.
Oh, too kind.
Well, why not? I mean, if I'm working here, we'll be getting to see quite a lot of each other in the future, shan't we?
I regret that will not be the case, Mrs. Peel.
Oh?
I shall soon be passing out.
Passing out?
I am within a fishtail of receiving my diploma in ballroom dancing. When I have that, I shall have no need to attend classes. I shall pass on, Mrs. Peel, and we shall not meet again. Excuse me, please.
Emma, suffering. Why not put your feet above the level of your head? It soothes them so much that the agony's only excruciating. Nicky, Mr. Peaver was telling me he'll be receiving his diploma soon. That's right. Yeah, but I've been dancing with him. If dancing's the word. No, he's terrible. Well, then why the diploma? Good for business, I suppose. Take the money, give a few lessons, and hand a diploma to another satisfied customer. Funny, though, how Lucille hands out those diplomas. It isn't everyone who gets them. They're just handed out to a select few. Then, diploma in hand, they disappear. Never knew one who came back later. And here we have our most exclusive dance studio with a beautifully sprung floor, fully trained dance instructors in attendance at all times. You can see how well equipped we are, Mr. Steed.
John Steed, who was with Lucille, allowed his eyes to stray to Mrs. Peel.
You are indeed fully equipped.
Right. Now we can take some particulars. Now, this form. Your name?
Jonathan Steed.
A fine old English name.
Well, we came over with the Vikings. They were between raids and discovering America at the time.
Then you are British by birth.
Birth, nature, and inclination. Though I haven't spent much time here of late. Been abroad, you know, only returned last week.
Oh, to see your family?
Alas, I regret I have no family and no friends.
And you wish to learn to dance?
Well, brush up more than anything, you know. Once upon a time, I swung a rather elegant shoe, but now I'm fearfully rusty.
I see. Well, you may have your first lesson whenever convenient.
Why not right now?
Oh, very well. Excuse me, I'll make the necessary arrangements.
Steed strolled around the studio and ended up near Mrs. Peel.
What are you doing here?
Looking for a killer with a rose tattoo on his wrist.
What?
Here, take this parcel, read the message, and destroy it.
Destroy it? How?
Eat it, Mrs. Peel, if you can.
Hope you're keen on garlic sausage, Mrs. Peel. Privately, both John Steed and Emma Peel confessed that they had seldom worked upon a case that had so many clues. Most of the clues were so bewildering that they did nothing to clarify matters. In fact, it was all becoming a little too complex. How were the four establishments, Toby Tintry's tattoo shop, Zitchin & Co.'s dress hire, Piedi's shoemakers, and Terpsichorean training techniques linked together? Steed admitted that he didn't know. All he did know was that clothes and shoes made at two of the places ended up at the dance studio. That was why he and Mrs. Peel ended up there, too.
Here, Mrs. Peel, here's some valuable evidence. Now, for heaven's sake, read the message and destroy it.
Destroy it?
Eat it.
Oh, there you are, Mr. Steed.
Oh, coming, dear lady, coming.
I have decided to undertake your tuition myself. Personally.
Oh, really?
Come along, this way.
Lucille swept Steed away towards the ballroom, leaving Mrs. Peel clutching the parcel Steed handed to her. Mrs. Peel read the message tattooed by Toby Tintry in his dying moments.
The killer has a rose tattoo on the right wrist, tattooed on a garlic sausage. Oh, the one thing I loathe is garlic sausage. Oh, well.
Back in the ballroom, Lucille put on a record. They danced.
I'm surprised you're still a bachelor, Mr. Steed. You are a bachelor.
Yes. There was a girl once, but the rest of it actually is no more.
She married?
Died, passed away tragically.
Oh, on your travels, the Amazon, a crocodile?
21 bus outside King's Cross, actually. Since then, well, I've always remained single and gone by taxi.
Oh, but come, Mr. Steed, there must be someone in this big city that you know.
No, I'm afraid not. I told you, I haven't been back all that long. All my friends have moved away, and I have their family.
Oh, why, you poor man. Why, just think if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would know or care, would they?
Got the message yet, Steed? Mrs. Peel had successfully disposed of the garlic sausage without eating it, but making sure the message was destroyed. On her return from the ladies' cloakroom, she banged into Bernard, a shop assistant at Piedi's, where Mrs. Peel had been fitted by plaster cast for some special shoes. Bernard approached at speed.
Oh! Sorry. Hey, where's Nicky?
Oh, not here at the moment. I'll fetch her for you.
Oh, no, just see that she gets this, will you? This parcel.
Bernard handed over a large parcel.
Hey, haven't I seen you somewhere before?
No, I don't think so. You want this to go to Nicky?
That's right. And no one else. That's important. Strange. I could have sworn I'd seen you somewhere before.
Mrs. Peel watched him go, looked down at the parcel, shook it, and then tore away a piece of the brown paper wrapping.
Hey, is that Bernard? Hey, Emma, please, you can't open that. Not in here. Oh, the sea will blow it up into the locker room. It's all right. It isn't a bomb. Only shoes. Shoes? Yeah. I suppose Bernard told you about our little arrangement. No? Oh, well. It's all quite simple, really. I suppose this means that we'll have to cut you in for a third. A third of what? What arrangement? Well,
Bernard works for P.A.D. the shoemaker, and P.A.D. sells all our pupils their first pair of dancing pumps. Well, but only the first pair, you see. After that, Bernard supplies them on the side. Cuts out P.A.D., cuts out the middleman. See? Pupils get cheaper shoes, Bernard makes his profit, and there's something in it for me. Everyone's happy, nobody suffers. Well, isn't it a bit risky for you? I mean, approaching pupils like you. Oh, Bernard attends to that. He waits outside after school, buttonholes them then. I see. So one way or another, Bernard meets all the pupils sooner or later. Yeah, that's right. Including Mr. Peaver? Of course, everyone. Now, we really must be getting back.
The two girls moved off, not noticing a locker that had been open all the time. Inside sat Chester Reed, the band leader. He had a bottle and a glass with him. He wasn't exactly sober.
The things one hears in locker rooms. Funniest things. I must remember to tell Lucille. The funniest things one hears in locker rooms.
In the main ballroom, Steed had finished his first lesson with Lucille. He'd done really rather well. He paused near Peaver on the side of the room where Peaver was lacing a shoe. Steed suddenly bent down and whipped Peaver's sleeve high on his arm.
What's on here?
Just checking on the time. Your wristwatch.
I wear it on the other wrist. Here, it's a minute fast, actually.
Oh, thanks so much. So that's the time, is it? Oh, well, dancing does make the hours spin away, doesn't it? Thank you.
Steed moved off and found Mrs. Peel.
Peel, before you go to your dance yet again...
What is it, Steed?
Peaver, over there. He's an imposter. No tattoo lovingly inscribed to Lucille. Trouble isn't the tattooist. Our only witness is dead.
There may be another. The shoe shop man named Bernard. He may be able to help. I've got it down to Peters to see him.
Now, please assemble. Come along now.
Oh, Miss Banks, I'm terribly sorry. I'm having trouble with my shoe. I'm afraid the heel's a bit loose and likely to break off any minute. I wonder if I might pop out and get it seen to?
Yes, get it attended to right away. And please hurry back. Now, come along, everyone. Come along. We have a lot of dancing to do.
Mrs. Peel beat a hasty retreat. Back in Teddy's shoe shop, Bernard was making up for lost time. In the workshop, he was preparing a bowl of plaster, mixing it thoroughly. He was so engrossed in the work that he didn't hear either Bracewell enter. Bracewell tapped him on the shoulder.
Bernard?
What the... Bracewell, what do you want?
This.
Bracewell laid him out with one blow, and then carefully arranged him at the workbench, thrusting his head deeply into the bowl of plaster. He was still there, with the plaster hardened, when Mrs. Peel found him, dead.
Poor old Bernard. Really plastered this time.
Back in the dance salon, Mrs. Peel managed to whisper the truth to John Steed.
He's dead, all right.
So, we have lost another witness and found another victim. So now we have to go...
Back to square one.
To the heart of the matter. Peaver is an imposter, and this dancing school is conniving to the deception, so...
Carry on dancing, eh? Oh, well.
Oh, there you are, Emma. Give me a hand with these posters.
Yes, sure. What are they? Gala night. Tomorrow night. Happens once a fortnight. Dance to Chester Reed and his band. Backed up with a lot of crummy records behind the screen. A couple of currant buns, half a glass of lemonade, and they all go into an ecstasy of rhythm. Is this when the advanced students receive their diplomas? Yeah. Only one this time. Mr. Peaver.
Nicky, since you've been here, have you noticed anything, any changes in Mr. Peaver?
Hardly. But then I wouldn't. He's more Lucille's client than mine. I remember when he first enrolled. She really kept him to herself.
Does she often do that?
Once in a while. Nearly always there's a mousy, anonymous creatures. She keeps them under wraps. It's sometimes 3 or 4 weeks before I'm allowed to see them.
Right, come along, girls. I think we finished for the day.
I can't wait to get home and fill that football.
Goodbye, everyone. Don't forget your next lesson. Goodbye, Mr. Steed. You're going to be our star pupil. You'll be here tomorrow on time.
Oh, you couldn't keep me away.
Night.
Night.
Good night. Good night.
Ivor, did all go well?
Easy. No trouble at all.
Good. The boss will be pleased.
I'll tell him myself.
You can also tell him about John Steed.
What about him?
He will be our next victim.
Always knew you were too good for the chorus, Steed. John Steed and Emma Peel were now quite convinced that the dance salon Terpsichorean Training Techniques was a cover-up organization. They knew there was at least one imposter as a client, and they were sure there was a direct link between the activities of the dancing school and several mysterious and gruesome murders. There was a gala night planned, and Mrs. Peel got to the studios early. Not because she wanted to practice, oh no, she wanted to snoop. In a corridor flanking the main ballroom, it was clear that someone was rehearsing. That someone was Lucille Banks, who ran the place.
Right, now just let's try it again.
Mrs. Peel followed the voice down the corridor. There was a small fanlight. From beyond came the sound of a dancing.
I've just got to risk it. That packing case.
Mrs. Peel climbed onto the packing case and looked through the fanlight. To her amazement, Lucille was dancing with a tailor's dummy and talking to someone in the shadows.
You see, it's got to be absolutely smooth to glide into it. No hesitation. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2
Mrs. Peel, to her amazement, saw the dummy had card number 9 on its back. Lucille steered it cunningly towards a big arched display piece at the end of the room.
Be ready now. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Close back. Quick and slow.
Lucille disappeared behind the display piece and appeared out of the other side. Her partner now was a real man. The dummy had been jettisoned. The man wore identical clothes and had the number 9 on his back.
Splendid. Splendid, Boris. Much better. You did that perfectly. You'll be in perfect form for the takeover this evening.
Mrs. Peel had seen enough. She jumped down into the corridor and was hastily replacing the packing case in its original position when Chester Reed appeared, all bleary-eyed and slightly incoherent.
What? What's you doing out here?
Well, I was looking for another door. The usual one into there's locked.
Oh, that's all right. It's only the seal. We're rehearsing for tonight. It's gala night, you know, tonight. Yes, it's gala night.
In Mitchin & Co. dress hire, John Steed was also preparing for gala night. He was resplendent in full tails. Cider was fitting him.
A splendid fit, sir. Yes, splendid fit.
Thank you. Now, where is the gentleman's secret pocket?
Oh, right here, sir.
Cider indicated a secret pocket in the waistband of the trousers.
Ah, excellent.
Steed dropped a miniature gun into the pocket.
Might run into a spot of bother tonight. Can't be too careful.
I see. No, if you will forgive me, sir, that the suit, you won't forget it. It is on hire, and if damaged, the deposit
will have to be forfeited. Yes, I know. But don't worry. If the worst comes to worst, I'll endeavor to get shot where it doesn't show.
Very thoughtful of you, sir. Thank you so much. Best of luck.
And later, at the dance salon, things were really swinging.
Glad you could make it.
Oh, I wouldn't miss one of your little forays for the world, Miss Banks.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Mr. Steed, how splendid you look.
Good evening, Miss Banks.
This is your first experience of one of our little events. Please feel free to move around and enjoy yourself.
Steed moved on and managed to get himself alongside both the canapes and Mrs. Peel. Good steering.
Steed, this is bigger than we think.
You mean it's bigger than both of us? Miss Peel,
I mean, this organization. It's some sort of swap system, a takeover. A takeover of another person, another man's personality. I saw the whole dress rehearsal. Lucille danced around the ballroom, a quick whirl out of sight behind some scenery, and a change of partners.
Sort of magic. The real purpose of the school is to infiltrate foreign agents into the country. You first select a lonely, anonymous bat.
Who no one's going to miss.
Get rid of him and replace him with a highly trained agent.
Off with the old, on with the new.
Marvelous method. I don't want to make a move yet, but I'd like to catch them red-handed.
Well, you'll get your chance tonight. They're planning another swap.
That's right. Any idea who it is?
I haven't found out yet, but hey, watch it, here's Lucille.
Oh, no, dear Mrs. Peel. Even if you went down on your bended knees and begged, I'm absolutely booked up until dance number 12. Of course, I might be able to fit you in between Sir Roger de Coverley and the Lancers, Oh, the thanks.
Mr. Steed, we're all going into the ballroom. If you're ready.
Certainly. Don't give up hope, Mrs. Peel. I may have a cancellation.
Mrs. Peel hung back as all the guests trooped in. She hid behind a potted palm when Ivor Bracewell approached with the man she'd seen rehearsing with Lucille.
You go through there to the back of the studio. He'll be wearing a number 9 on his back like you.
I understand. I have rehearsed.
Good. And off you go. No slip-ups. The boss doesn't like them.
Mrs. Peel, sure now that she was right, moved into the ballroom where Lucille was making a speech.
I must explain that this is now competition time. Chester Reed has kindly consented to do the judging. It will be on your dancing alone.
Steed, I've located the next victim.
Who?
He'll be wearing number 9.
Steed, this is your number.
6. Oh, we can eliminate me.
Mrs. Peel, I understand you've been chosen to partner me.
Ivor Bracewell, how nice. Who would have thought it, Mr. Steed? We are dancing together.
Oh, are we? Charmed. Lucille.
Allow me to pin the number on you.
Lucille moved behind Steed and with 2 pins provided, pinned the number on his back. But you haven't got eyes in your head, Steed. She'd put the 6 on upside down. You're number 9. At that point, the music started up.
The 1 o'clock jump.
Mrs. Peel took to the floor with the obnoxious Bracewell pressing so tightly against her she could hardly breathe. So concerned was she with her own plight that it wasn't until some while later that she got a glimpse of Steed's back.
Sorry.
Something wrong?
No, nothing at all.
Mrs. Peel caught Steed's eye and immediately waved at her partner's back. Steed waved back nonchalantly. Mrs. Peel turned Bracewell round so that Steed could see he was wearing number 6. Steed turned
Are you trying to do a reverse double flip, you mad, impetuous man?
Mrs. Peel and John Steed contrived to steer their partners nearer to each other.
You, Steed. You're number 9. But what?
And you are dancing with garlic sausage.
Mrs. Peel looked down at Bracewell's wrist. There was the tattoo. At this point, they both thought quickly and thought alike. Mrs. Peel put a hand round Bracewell's shoulders and removed the top pin of his card. The 6 fell down and became a 9. Steed had a bit of difficulty scratching his back, but eventually withdrew the top pin of his card. It fell down and became a 6. They danced towards the display piece at the end of the ballroom. Steed and Lucille sailed in first, and much to Lucille's surprise, out of the other side. Mrs. Peel and Bracewell followed them, and Boris, seeing the number 9 on Bracewell's back, hit him hard with a cosh. Boris grabbed Mrs. Peel and danced out onto the floor, but Mrs. Peel conveniently tripped, got a hold, and threw him back behind the display. Lucille, seeing what had happened, left Steed and rushed forward. Steed grabbed Mrs. Peel and said,
Shall we dance?
And did a quick polka to the nearest exit. Lucille, Peever, and Chester Reed, leaving the dance hall in chaos, rushed after them.
Stay here somewhere. Take that side, Peter.
Lucille made a bad choice. She crashed into Mrs. Peel. Mrs. Peel grabbed her by arm and leg and swung her round a few times.
It's about time you tried the real attache stuff.
Lucille Banks took the whole length of the corridor before she came to rest, out cold. Peever was mad enough to tackle Steed. Steed clobbered him with someone's dancing pump.
Well, Mr. Peel, that's the opposition cleared away, I think.
I think you'll stay exactly where you are, both of you.
Chester Reed, miraculously cured of any signs of drink, was facing them with a snub-nosed revolver in his hand.
Chester Reed, the drunken band leader.
Not drunken, but I am the leader, the boss.
The one who persuaded Willie Fair to use your organization as an escape route, to get his own back on the service that had downgraded him. The man behind it all?
That's right. Too bad you stumbled over all this, Mr. Steed.
Oh, I don't know. I've enjoyed my lessons here. You know, the step I enjoyed the most was...
Quick, slow, quick.
Like this!
With enormous speed, Steed leapt forward and grabbed Reed's gun arm.
And slow. Oh, Steed, I'm so sorry. Look at your evening jacket. It's torn. And the bullet clipped the shoulder padding.
Mrs. Peel, whenever I go out with you, I'm always prepared to lose my deposit.
Sure you know that by now. Let's shimmy off, shall we?
Shield gives a confidence that actually shows.
In your eyes.
Put on Shield deodorant and it's dry in seconds. That's the way it stays right through the day. Shield never makes you feel sticky. It just protects you and keeps you dry, feminine, fresh. Wear Shield, and the only thing you show is confidence. Shield gives a confidence that actually shows.
In your eyes.